I told myself it was a clerical error, the kind that happens quietly, without malice, the kind that lives in the overlap between databases, where one name echoes another and systems fail to ask better questions. It felt reasonable, reassuring even. I said the words, "I don't have a daughter," with the calm precision of someone correcting a misspelled address or a wrong account number. A statement of fact, nothing more. The woman on the phone didn't argue. She didn't apologize. There was no hesitation, no awkward silence where confusion might surface. She simply repeated the request, her voice steady, procedural, as if I hadn't spoken at all. As if the sentence I'd offered had no bearing on what came next. That unsettled me. I hung up and stared at my desk. The room was unchanged, indifferent. A spreadsheet blinked on my screen, a single cell highlighted, waiting for input. Numbers half entered. Tasks paused mid-thought. The kind of work that assumes continuity, that presumes the person typing will remain intact. I stared at it longer than necessary, then shut my laptop without saving. The click of it closing felt final in a way it shouldn't have. I sat there for a moment after, hands resting flat on the desk, as if waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. The drive took 20 minutes. I knew the route before I started, traffic patterns, lights, where the road narrowed briefly near the intersection. I spent the time rehearsing the correction I would deliver when I arrived. I refined the wording carefully, trimming anything that sounded emotional or defensive. I imagined the relief of watching a problem dissolve under precise language. I would explain that I was not the right person, that their files were wrong, that this situation did not belong to me. I had practiced that posture for years, standing adjacent to things that almost belonged to me, then stepping aside before they could settle. It was a skill, really, a way of staying intact. The school came into view sooner than I expected. I parked and sat in the car for a moment, engine still running, finishing the sentence in my head one last time. Then I turned it off and went inside. The school smelled like disinfectant and pencil shavings, a combination that felt both sterile and worn. The halls were quiet, not peaceful, but disciplined, the kind of quiet that implies rules rather than comfort. Posters about accountability lined the walls, their slogans softened by time and fingerprints. Choices have consequences. Responsibility is character. At the front desk, a receptionist looked up and asked my name. I gave it. She nodded before I finished saying it, as if the sound alone was enough confirmation. That nod unsettled me more than the phone call had. It suggested expectation, preparedness, as if my arrival had been anticipated rather than mistaken. "Please have a seat," she said. Already standing, already moving. I sat. The chair was too small, or maybe I remembered it being too small. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly, each second marking time I hadn't planned to spend here. Somewhere down the hall, a locker slammed shut. The sound echoed briefly, then disappeared. I thought about the last time I'd been in a school office. How heavy authority felt in those rooms. How adults spoke carefully, as if words were tools rather than expressions. I remembered how final things sounded there, how decisions seemed to solidify once spoken inside those walls. I told myself again that this would end quickly. That clarity would correct the error. That I would walk out lighter than I had come in. The door to the principal's office opened. She was smaller than I expected. Not younger, there was nothing childlike about her, but physically compressed, as if she had learned, over time, how to take up less space than she was allowed. She stood with her shoulders slightly folded inward, weight balanced carefully, as though she had practiced being unobtrusive. Her hair was pulled back too tightly, the way it is when someone does it themselves in a hurry, without a mirror, without time to correct it. A few strands had slipped loose near her temples, already rebelling against the restraint. She wore a sweatshirt that was clearly too big for her, the sleeves hanging past her hands. She held one sleeve over her knuckles, fingers hidden, the fabric stretched thin where she worried it. Her face was red from crying, not the swollen redness of ongoing tears, but the flushed aftermath of them. Whatever had broken through earlier had already been forced back into place. I didn't recognize her all at once. Recognition did not arrive as a single revelation. It came in fragments, spaced apart, each one small enough to be dismissed on its own. The slope of her nose, the familiar angle of her brow, the crease that formed between her eyebrows when she frowned. These were details that could belong to anyone, details that could be coincidence, until the accumulation of them made coincidence untenable. I stopped in the doorway. The pause was brief, but noticeable enough that it registered. The principal gestured toward a chair, her movement smooth and practiced. "Thank you for coming," she said, with the careful neutrality of someone trained to keep emotion out of process. Her voice carried no accusation, no sympathy, only structure. I sat. The chair resisted me slightly, then settled. The girl did not look up. Her gaze remained fixed somewhere near the floor, as though eye contact would complicate things beyond control. I'm going to be very clear. The principal continued, folding her hands neatly on the desk. Your daughter was involved in a serious incident today. This is not her first. After review, the decision to expel stands. I opened my mouth reflexively. Closed it again. The sentence I had prepared, I don't have a daughter, rose up automatically, then stalled. It felt suddenly inadequate. Too blunt. Too careless for the room I was in. The words existed, but they no longer fit cleanly into the space available. There have been multiple attempts to contact her guardian, the principal said, sliding a folder across the desk toward me. You're listed as the primary emergency contact. The folder made a soft sound against the wood as it stopped in front of me. Paperwork has a way of making things real without asking permission. Forms, signatures, dates. Evidence arranged in orderly stacks. My name appeared more than once, written in my own hand from years ago. The ink had faded slightly, but not enough to excuse it. A medical consent form. An emergency contact sheet. An address I no longer lived at. I recognized the circumstances under which I had signed them. The time when proximity felt manageable and distance felt like a plan rather than an evasion. Back when leaving something partially intact felt safer than leaving it entirely undone. She asked for you, the principal added. The words were delivered without emphasis, without judgment. Not an accusation, just a fact placed gently on the table. The girl's shoulders tightened almost imperceptibly. A small reaction, but deliberate. She still didn't look at me. Her grip on the sleeve tightened. Fabric pulled further over her knuckles. The room remained quiet. No one rushed to fill it. That quiet carried weight. I can explain. I said, though even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure to whom they were meant. They felt automatic, a reflex rather than a plan. An attempt to delay the weight of what had already been placed in front of me. There's been a misunderstanding. The principal met my eyes without urgency. She didn't lean forward or back. She didn't interrupt. I don't think there has, she said, her voice steady, uninflected. But I'm open to hearing you. That was the moment. Not dramatic, not loud. There was no sharp intake of breath, no raised voices. Authority didn't announce itself, it arranged the facts carefully and waited. The control I had assumed I possessed, through absence, through distance, through denial, shifted. Not suddenly, but decisively. Something I had relied on without examining was quietly removed. I wasn't involved, I said. The pause inside the sentence stretched longer than I intended. The word itself felt imprecise, insufficient. Her mother and I, this was years ago. The explanation landed thinly, as though it lacked the density required to stay in place. I heard it the way others might hear it, partial, evasive, worn smooth from use. The principal nodded once. I'm not here to adjudicate your history, she said. I'm here to tell you that as of today, this student cannot return, and that she cannot leave with no responsible adult. Responsible. The word hovered in the air longer than the rest. It carried definition, expectation, and consequence all at once. I looked at the girl then. Not in fragments this time. I looked deliberately, forcing myself to take in the whole of her. Her posture. The tension held in her shoulders. The way her feet were planted as if prepared for resistance. When her eyes flicked up for half a second and then away again, the movement was practiced. Not shy. Strategic. Hope rationed carefully, released only in increments that could be withdrawn quickly if necessary. Do you want to go? I asked her. The question emerged before I could stop it. Even as it settled in the room, I knew it was the wrong one. It transferred weight where it didn't belong. It asked for consent where none was required. We both understood that. She shrugged barely. The motion was economical, restrained. I guess. The principal slid another document across the desk. The movement mirrored the earlier one, deliberate and neutral. There are requirements, she said. Meetings. An interim plan. If you are unable or unwilling to take on guardianship responsibilities, we need to know now. Unwilling. The word struck with more force than unable. Unable suggested limits. Circumstance. Constraint. Unwilling suggested choice. Refusal. A decision not to step forward when stepping forward was possible. I thought about the life I had constructed around not being needed. How efficiently it functioned. How quiet it was. A life designed to minimize friction, obligation, dependency. I thought about how fear can dress itself up as principle if given enough time. How easy it is to confuse restraint with integrity. I can take her, I said. The sentence was clean. Measured. It didn't reach for courage or redemption. It was a statement of capacity, not of promise. Not I will fix this. Not I will make it better. Only I and Abel. The principal nodded again. Not relieved, not pleased. Satisfied in the way systems are satisfied when conditions are met. The decision remained unchanged. The consequence stood exactly as it had before I spoke. No allowances were made, no exceptions granted. That, oddly, felt like mercy. We walked out together. There was no ceremony to it, no signal that marked the shift from private decision to public consequence. The hallway stretched out in front of us, longer than it had seemed on the way in. Distance has a way of expanding when it is shared. Other students watched as we passed, their curiosity sharpened by the visibility of trouble. Not sympathy, not judgment, just attention. The kind that lingers briefly and then moves on. The girl kept her hands tucked inside the sleeves of her sweatshirt, shoulders slightly hunched. She walked half a step behind me, close enough to suggest connection, far enough to preserve distance. I matched her pace without thinking, neither slowing nor rushing. Outside, the air was sharp, immediate. The kind of cold that clarifies sensation rather than dulling it. She stopped near the curb, the line between school and street forming a natural pause. "You don't have to," she said, staring at the ground. The words were quiet but practiced, as if she had said them before or prepared to. "I know," I said. She waited. Not for reassurance exactly, but for continuation, for elaboration that never came. When none did, she accepted it without comment. The car ride was silent. Not tense, not comfortable, just present. The engine filled the space where conversation might have gone. I noticed small things instead. The way she buckled her seatbelt without prompting, movements automatic and efficient. The way she kept her gaze fixed forward, hands folded in her lap. These were not gestures of rebellion. They were gestures of self-maintenance. At a red light, she glanced at me. The look was brief, measured. "Are you mad?" "No," I said. The word arrived easily, unburdened by explanation. After a pause long enough to matter, I added, "Are you?" She considered the question seriously. Not defensively. "I don't know." That felt like the most honest thing said all day. It didn't resolve anything. It didn't pretend to. It simply acknowledged uncertainty as a legitimate state. When we pulled into my driveway, she didn't move right away. Neither did I. The house looked exactly as it always had, still intact, unchanged by what had just occurred. That constancy felt unfair. As if the external world had failed to register the internal shift that had taken place. "This doesn't fix everything," I said, "because accuracy mattered. And I don't know how to do all of this." She nodded. The response was immediate, uncomplicated. Okay. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't resolution. There was no relief in it. Just acknowledgement. An understanding that weight had been placed on both of us, and that neither of us was pretending otherwise. We went inside. The door closed behind us softly, without emphasis. No celebration followed. No collapse. The house absorbed us without comment. It was not an ending. It was not a solution. It was the beginning of something I could no longer pretend wasn't mine.